Welcome back to Reddit RX. On today's video, what's the most outrageously expensive thing you've seen in person? The Patek Philippe Grandmaster Chime-in Steel at an only watch showing in London. All the big watch companies do a one-off for the charity auction, and Patek usually only do watches in precious metals. A grand complication in steel is truly a one-off. It sold for 31 million Swiss francs, close to 35 M USD. I actually held it in my gloved hand. The CEO of my husband's company years back held a Christmas party at this house. At the time, the company was a startup and there was maybe 20 employees. He had original Picasso artwork on his walls. I have no idea how much they were actually worth, but I thought that was pretty cool. A comic book shop called Silver Snail used to have Amazing Spider-Man #1 on display and for sale. This was back in the mid-90s. Edit, the one on Queen Street. I guess it's not entirely outrageous, but I went to a family-owned aquarium store a couple months ago to get some medicine for my guppies. And they were selling 1-year-old arowana fish for $6,000 each. I'm probably just ignorant when it comes to prices of exotic fish, but I was quite surprised considering they were surrounded by guppies and goldfish whose lives are worth approximately $2.50 each. My high school orchestra teacher, who is also concert master for the Arkansas Symphony, was loaned a $12 million Stradivarius anonymously for an upcoming performance. I wasn't allowed to touch it, but I got a solid look at it, as well as heard it from 3 feet away. My sister used to work on super yachts. I'd go visit her every now and again and stay on the boat during off-season, in crew quarters. This was about €500 million worth of boat. And it was pretty damn fancy. It had glass flooring and staircases that turned opaque if you stood on them. So people couldn't look up your skirt. All the usual fancy boat shit like a spa and gym and movies that hadn't even been released at the cinema yet. I went to a party at a pool house when I was a teenager. Just the pool house was 4,000 square featuring. The kid's grandfather invented sheetrock. Outside of the crown jewels and art museums, I went to Harrods and saw chandelier worth £50,000. Edit, some people are taking this quite literally. To be clear, yes, of course I've seen more expensive items, hence the crown jewels. This wasn't a grand hall chandelier. This was something you could hang over a standard dining room table. A freshly drafted NFL rookie stayed at a hotel I worked at and partied a little too hard. When checking out, he left over $100K in jewelry in the room. I was tasked with going and getting it and securing it till someone from his posse could come get it. I wore it for a few hours for fun. Heavy AF and so fucking shiny. A bracelet that was wider than the biggest watch covered in diamonds, and a chain that went past my sternum and probably 1/2 inches in thickness, also completely encrusted in diamonds. I attended a wedding that was rumored to cost well over $1 million. There was 2 venues. If I remember, there was 9+ member band flown in from NYC, another strings band during the ceremony, and a 3rd trumpet band that escorted the walk to the reception. An artist oil painted the reception live at the party. The food was incredible. Each table was over the top with guests having their own glass engraved with their name to take home. They gave people dancing shoes you could take home. It was incredible and probably the most expensive private event I will ever attend. I'm sure I'm missing some other details, but everything was over the top. The set designs for fashion shows. When I was working as a scenic carpenter, I was always amazed at the amount of money spent on scenery that will go right into the trash for events that last 30 minutes to a couple of hours. We covered an empty warehouse floor in Manhattan with something like 50,000 square feet of beveled oak boards in one instance. Material costs aside, we had a crew of around 20 guys making at minimum $25 each hour, working for days around the clock to make it happen. In Aspen, CO a few years back in a small antique store. We walk in and the guy working there never even acknowledges us while he's casually chatting on his phone. I see a carved wood eagle sculpture about 2 feet tall and 1 foot wide. I flip over the price tag, $125,000. I laughed out, looked at my friend and said this isn't our kind of store and promptly left. Aspen is the weirdest place I've ever visited. I worked security at an art museum and we exhibited this little Chinese teacup with a rooster on it. The little ass thing was worth over $36 million. Apparently there were only 4 in the whole world. I felt unsafe around it, like I'm not risking my life for this stupid cup. A wealthy couple had a pair of Steinway Concert Grand Model D pianos at opposite ends of their spacious living room. Neither the husband nor his wife played. The pianos, valued at about $175,000 each, were just there for show, and when they hired someone like me to play piano for an occasional cocktail dinner party. Note: I once posted this comment some time ago to a similar question in Ascredit. Asterisk. Catered a high school graduation party. We did fried chicken and mashed potatoes, so had no idea how we ended up serving food in a mansion. Turns out the daughter was going to Auburn, so they wanted something southern. Out of 200 people there, they ate maybe 4 full plates of food. They had another catering bring the real party food. TLDR. People dropped $3K on food just for the novelty of it. I live in NYC and like to be a tourist sometimes, so my husband and I went to the 5th Avenue Tiffany's. I don't even wear jewelry, but I like shiny things and a very nice, clearly bored sales associate let me try on a yellow diamond, 2.5 carat engagement ring. For fun, I asked the price and it was $65,000. I can't even imagine how rich you would have to be to have that as your engagement ring. And that be a normal thing. $10 K20K bicycles. I must have looked poor, because the guy running the place pretty much kicked me out as soon as I walked in. Last year I went to Florida. At one point, we went to the Kennedy Space Center. I was in the gift shop, and, if I remember correctly, there was a chunk at a meteorite selling for $12,000. F-35 and F-22, both at air shows. F-35s were parked and didn't fly. But I got to see the F-22 showing off at a different air show. The way I describe it is it's an IRL cheat code plane. It doesn't even look real. Years ago, I apprenticed as a luthier. The shop I worked in was almost entirely guitar repair, and one day a woman came in with a violin. She said it was her grandfather's, or maybe great-grandfather's. I can't recall, and he had played in the Detroit Symphony. It was obvious that the fingerboard had been replaced at some point, and the instrument was really old. Like, really old. My boss knew a guy who specialized in violins, so he drove a couple hours to have him take a look at it. The guy told him to get it out of our shop immediately and send them to a specialist in Chicago. He said it was early to mid 1700s and was an exceptional instrument. Everyone has heard of Stradivarius violins, but not many people have heard of Guarneri, his rival. Apparently, there are still a few lost Guarneri violins out there, and this guy thought that this was one of them. My boss trusted this guy, and I trusted my boss. He has 2 Rady as the personal guitar tech for the like of Kenny Rogers, Big and Rich, Robert Randolph, etc. So we called this lady up, told her where to go, and gave it back to her. We didn't want to get her hopes up too high just in case the guy was wrong, and I think she decided not to look into it further. I was under the impression that a trip to Chicago was not financially feasible. I'll never know if I held a real Guarneri or not, but if I did, I held a $10 million plus violin. It still shocks me whenever I fly. And I look through magazines and see ridiculously expensive shit. A gold pen for $1,700 plus. That you can sign your death bills with. Went to Disney World a few years back and got a glass slipper from a Rivas Brothers. One of the items they had was a jewel replica of the castle. It costs more than $30,000. And don't get me wrong, the thing looked wicked. But I'm not spending more on a decorative piece that will live behind glass, for my own sanity, than I spent on my car. I used to work for a Belana. They love to purchase very old wines, think 90 plus years old, random jewelry for their spouse, a solid gold sturgeon caviar holder, $1 M plus cars, etc. generally all through auction at Sotheby's. It was my job to organize their purchases. It was interesting to see what crazy things rich people spent their money on. I may or may not have tried on the jewelry. I play Magic the Gathering. My decks aren't expensive, but they're not cheap either. Normally around $400 to $700. Then I played against a guy who had a deck worth around $29,000. Crazy thing is that this was his first deck, and he bought all of the cards recently. He didn't even play that often either. So imagine dropping almost 30 grand on something that you'll use maybe once or twice a month. I shook Bill Gates' hand in 8th grade. He visited our school to make a donation to our district. Haven't came across anything more expensive since then. Versailles. A solid 60 pure gold coins that were in a small chest in a museum. The worth was $246k US dollars. Paul Newman's Rolex Daytona at an auction. Sold for $5,475,000. Back in the day I had to escort a Tulip Ego Diamond laptop prototype to a trade show, set it up in the booth, and ensure its return to the office, personally. A 12-year-old Russian kid who came to stay at a summer camp I worked at that has a £64,000 Rolex. We later found out that his 14-year-old cousin was actually his 28-year-old bodyguard, and he was the son of a Russian diplomat. All around nice kid, though. My dad is a professional viola player, and as a kid I often went to his concerts and occasionally went backstage to say hi. On one occasion he called me over and handed me a violin and said, "Guess how much you think this is worth?" I personally can't stand that game. It never ends well, but I played along anyway. £10,000? Higher, he said with a chuckle. £80,000? Higher. £150,000? Higher. So I thought it up there. Game. £1 million? Higher. $2 million? More. Dot. 5 more. Turned out this thing's was worth £7 million. I felt a little queasy and handed it back pronto. They were planning a Stradivarius concert with every instrument on stage being a Stradivarius. Insane. All Stradivarius violins, all Strad violas, cellos and double basses. The amount of money on that stage would have been unthinkable. A Rolex Deep Sea Dweller worth around $14,600. That my dad gifted to his dad. His dad didn't like the watch, so didn't wear it, and then my uncle decided to get it fixed using its warranty and now wears it. Dubai Gold Souk. People dropping 20k just like that. Have seen Koh-i-Noor diamond, which is estimated to be worth €140 to €400 million. I used to run a community pool, and we had one of the guys who swam on Michael Phelps relays in the Olympics come in to run a clinic. He just casually left his gold and silver medals in an office with a bunch of teenagers when he went out for a smoke. I went to a Patek Philippe exhibit in NYC. They are among the top high watch brands, with watches that go for tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Some go well over the $1 million mark. They're stunning pieces of art and machinery. When I told my mom where I was going, she asked if I was going to buy one. Watches aren't my mom's thing, so it's not like she knew the brand. I had to rein my laughter in hard before telling her that the cheapest watch that might possibly be there was more expensive than any car anyone in our family had ever bought. Nope, I was only going so I could do and die over amazing timepieces. I did bring home their info display catalog that was made for the exhibit. It's basically a softcover coffee table book of exquisite watches. If I ever win the lottery, I'd love to get one. I saw a lady show up to Walmart with a McLaren, wearing a 20k outfit. A 100k person, the best thing is she came to buy lotion. Flew into France and saw Bugatti Veyron at a nearby petrol station. The owner was surrounded by people trying to take photos of it. A bottle of whiskey that was $50k. If you purchased it, it had to be delivered via armored vehicle for insurance purposes. Seems a bit over the top, but I'm more of a $20 bottle of whiskey kind of guy. My budget and wife have made this very clear. The Mona Lisa, I guess? A glass of rare brandy in a Swarovski crystal glass. Apparently you can keep the glass after. It was $10K. I've seen a full-size autonomous helicopter prototype land and take off. There is no way to know its true value, but between the R&D, production, and military secrets, we're probably taking in the tens, if not hundreds, of millions of dollars. I can't remember its name exactly, but in Praha I saw Radiance of the Sun. A face mantelpiece job that was donated to the church a couple of 100 years ago. What's so fancy? A gold frame. The shape of the sun with over 6,000 diamonds on it. It does not have a price, apparently it is priceless. Edit. I found a photo of it on my phone. It's called a diamond ostensory. This particular one is from 1699 with over 6,000 diamonds. When I went to the rich part of the city, this one house had native art doors, specifically West Coast Canada native art. I'm native and my aunt owns a native art studio. So I already know this is expensive since it was nearly the entire surface area. I would estimate that the doors on this house cost $60,000 to $100,000. A $500 aluminum Christmas tree that a friend owned. Fruits in Japan. I saw a second-hand university textbook once. I saw cantaloupe in Japan for 1,500,000 yen, about $15,000 at the time. A basement garage in Greenwich City that has 12 Ferraris. Some Watkins Glen race models. All red. I believe the guy sold one recently to the WeatherTech guy for big $sign. A Nimitz class aircraft carrier. I lived on one of them and worked in the reactor department. Can't remember what the exact cost of one of those ships is, but it's well in excess of $1 billion. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this Reddit story, please like, comment and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.